Hello and welcome to Rooted in Quality by AfroQuality, the podcast that brings you all the people and the ideas and the movements that are shaping Africa's creative, cultural, and economic future. Today, we have a young man joining us who has a wonderful story that we believe can help to shape our thinking and understanding of a lot of the trends on the continent. My guest today is someone who embodies this vision. He is the founder and creative director of House of Tayo, a brand that comes out of Rwanda but has gained enough international acclaim to plant itself as one of the penultimate fashion brands and fashion houses in Rwanda. He is not just a designer, he is also a cultural architect. Matthew Rugamba, good afternoon and thanks for joining us on Rooted in Quality.
Good afternoon, Saints. Thank you for having me.
This is Rooted in Quality. Matthew, if someone you met the first time asked, who are you? Like, who are you really? What would be your answer?
I always struggle with that question because I feel that when I answer it, I should give I tend to give a snapshot of where I am right now in this point in time. I believe human beings evolve, and I feel that I've grown and I've changed. Right now, I'm a relatively new father. I'm a Hollywood, thank you. And a lot of my work, as a designer, as a creative director, I also look at the bigger picture now. I look at, I look at functional fashion. I look at, before maybe I just wanted to look really nice. Now, like, what would I wear as a dad? What would I wear if I was carrying 4 or 5 bags? So I think that my perception of myself continues to evolve, but I'm someone who always looks for authenticity, someone who enjoys storytelling, someone who wants to see Africa really continue to rise. I feel that this is an exciting time to be young and African on the continent, and I feel that it's an opportunity to not only create new narratives, but also to bring to the forefront narratives that existed before, but the world was not aware of. So I see a lot of responsibility. I see responsibility for myself as I've now become a senior fashion designer in Rwanda, in the industry. So I have to look at, what practices I'm taking on, what ways I'm doing business. It will impact whether a parent lets their kids go to fashion school. So I see a lot more responsibility in my personal life, in my work life. My team has grown over times, and I just want to do good work. I want to celebrate Rwanda and Africa. I want to change the way we do business and make this industry grow. So yeah.
If you are to put a pin in the spectrum of your life, based on your question about how you answer the question about who you are. So if you were to put a pin to say, looking back, when you were just starting out as House of Tayo, if you were to answer that question, how different is that answer from the answer that you're giving now? In terms of when you strip off being a father, a creative designer, everything, in terms of the person.
So at that time, I would call myself an aspiring fashion designer that wants to have stores in New York, London, that wants to have runway shows in those countries. And the reality is that that dream of being a big fashion designer then, it was sort of co-opted from looking at the Western fashion industry and saying, this is the path of a successful fashion designer. But now, it's actually 14 years almost to the day. It was actually yesterday, 25th was our 14-year anniversary. that dream and that those goals have evolved and changed. And so I had a vision, but part of it wasn't mine. Part of it was what I was sort of conditioned to believe is success. But at the baseline, my goal was to celebrate where I'm from, and fashion is, I found, was a really rich way to tell stories about where you're from, to celebrate and things like dignity, lifestyle, and character, all these elements where I believe we can celebrate it through things like fashion, through cuisine, through the arts. And I found that fashion was the way that I was going to do that.
You said something about if a parent would think and make a decision whether they would have their child become a fashion designer, they would look at what you are doing, and if you are not living right, that's shaped a certain thought in my mind in terms of how you see yourself. Is it right to say you are very conscious in terms of outside of your fashion, what the brand or the person Matthew Rugamba represents in the community?
I think that because I know the obstacles I faced when I was starting out, and you do have people who are closest to you who worry that I don't know whether they can succeed in this industry, but it's because they don't have an example for you to follow.
Reference.
There's no reference. So one of the things that really motivated me in the early days, especially, and it still motivates me now, is I have to show the brand growing. I have to show elements of success, because there are people who have told me, even early on when I was really struggling, that because they saw what I did, they entered the industry, or because they saw what I did, they pursued another creative interest. So that's where I see the sort of responsibility is that I need to, for our industry to grow, for the creativity, for the arts, success is an important element, because maybe their parents, their uncles, their aunties, whoever, their mentors will say, oh, maybe pass by there, ask them at House of Tire how they did it. We've been watching their story online for all these years. Look at how they did it. So it's possible. It's within reach. Everyone is inspired by someone else.
Congratulations again on your 14th anniversary. Do you consider it now, after doing it for 14 years, that this is your life's work?
Yes.
Or maybe to put the question differently, in another 14 years' time, would we find you still building House of Tayo?
The hope right now, I'll say the hope is yes, but I also hope that it will have evolved.
Definitely.
Not just within fashion, maybe within other elements.
Okay.
It's become so tied to my identity. To be honest, I've not really existed in any other work space. So I've shaped my company, the way I do admin, based on my experience. I have not existed in another really, like whether it's a corporate setting or I did this straight when I was in school. I started when I was in school, and so I hope that it will have evolved and taken even a different shape. I feel even just to make life interesting, people take on different roles. Maybe my role will have shifted within the company,
but still your effort will be on growing the vision.
Yes, and I think that one of the key things that I look at is, if I was to strip everything away, what would House of Tayo look like as a content company? What would it look like as a restaurant? What would it look like as a sports team? And if I'm able to identify characteristics and elements that remain consistent in each of those settings, then the sky is the limit. and then I would truly believe that we have something strong.
What excites you about the future of creativity on the continent?
I think the thing that excites me the most is that we're just scratching the surface. I don't like I don't feel like we're anywhere near the peak. Um, uh, Another thing that excites me is we are beginning to consume a lot more of our products, and we are able to now. I believe that there are many people on the continent building fashion businesses, and maybe the West is an afterthought. You know, I remember when I was starting out, and then people kept asking me, "Oh, what's your what's your autumn winter collection going to be like?" I'm like, we don't have the same winters, you guys. Yeah, it's maybe at most we have wet and dry
It's
season.
a dry season,
You know,
where I don't
from, you know. So now I'm trying to build this whole autumn winter collection, and there are times I was trying to say, okay, what would it look like? And then at the end of the day, I'm like, it's not my context, and I'm selling here primarily. So I think that we're starting to see more brands that are just like, listen, if the West likes my products, they can come to. We're not going to go and chase fashion weeks around the world. I will go from Cape to Cairo to find my clients, and and the rest of the world will can come find me where I am. I think that's exciting.
Beautiful. If you had to bet on an emerging trend that would define the future of African style in the next 10 years, what will it be?
That is that's very challenging, and something that I continue to think about. But now we'll go back to numbers and data, and the youngest continent in the world. Whatever it is, it's going to be driven by the youth and what the youth want to celebrate, what the youth want to embody, and so although I think I'm still quite young, I'm looking at the youth culture. I love just coming here to Zaria Courts and looking at kids playing basketball, watching their style, looking at what they're wearing. I like doing this in many cities around the world, but I'm glad that Kigali is now having more and more centers where you're seeing youth, and so I don't know what it's going to be, but I do believe that it is going to be driven by the youth.
You've had your work worn on global carpets around the world. What does that visibility actually do for the business back on the continent, the bottom line?
This is funny because I had a few experiences over the years that motivated me to focus on the business model and efficiency and production. This was for the first Black Panther. We dressed Junior and Nyong'o, and once that suit went online, that was the first time my phone froze because of Instagram. And we had people from all over the world saying, "How can I get this exact outfit? I will send you money for it now." That fabric had run out. There was like no way we could produce more, even if I wanted to. We had special Black Panther elbow patches. Someone said, "Can I just buy the elbow patches?" And I hadn't even thought that I could sell it as a unit. And people were ready to throw money at us, but we couldn't. We were so focused on creating that outfit. And I said, everyone that I know assumes that now the money's flowing in. Black Panther is the biggest movie in the world. It's been the biggest movie for some time. That you've made it. And I was sitting there and I was like, my bank account didn't take, because I wasn't prepared. And I kept telling myself, the next time things like these happen, we have to be prepared. And so I started to focus on the business, and trying to see how we can grow our team, how we can increase our production, how we could increase our reach. And but what it did in the short term was credibility. I had someone who visited the week before, and at that time we were doing traditional like suits. Now we discontinued suits, but at that time we were, and he didn't want to pay what we were asking, and it was nothing, to be honest. We had to underprice just to get people buying our products, and he's like, no, no, no. I'll go and I'll get my suit somewhere else. No, the day after the suit went viral, he said, so I'm coming with a deposit tomorrow. And I was like, and he was assuming we were going to just take
wait for him.
No, his assumption was that he talked like we had agreed on the order. And he's like, at that time we were accepting 50% deposit, came with 70. And then he left it with. So immediately it was credibility. And that credibility was still, it was, I would say, it was more valuable than the money at that point. Because so many people didn't believe that Rwandan fashion could reach those heights. And since then, we've had so many different Rwandan fashion designers reach new heights, and it's happened consistently since then. So it was so important, and that credibility. And now, before that, people, if I had an appointment with someone, they felt that if we said 2 p.m., they could rock up at 4 because you're not creative, you're not supposed to have something so important. And it was so frustrating because I'd be sitting there with my notepads and everything. And so that credibility was so important for us. And it was why I was willing to do that suit. We emptied out our account. We were using premium materials. I paid an arm and a leg with the DHL. We stopped all other production, and we had to do that suit in 2.5 days. So I had multiple people working on it, and then each one of those people, you're paying them above and beyond what they would usually get. So we emptied our account, and not to be paid for that suit, but because the credibility was going to lay the groundwork for what we want to achieve in the future.
Now, looking at this kind of setup where you have a good endorsement, but then from the commercial machinery that exists to drive the business, you underestimated what it could look like. I'm just thinking, because I've heard this from a lot of creatives, so it gives me the sense that that we think about the businesses, but we don't think about them in terms of structurally what it takes for it to be like an LVMH or an H&M or something. Is there something missing in the way creatively when we are building businesses we look at things? Why does that happen quite often? And that's not even your experience. I'm sure when you talk to other creatives, they will all keep telling you the same experience. I think about 3-4 months ago, there was another African artisan that was making, I think, shea butter or something, and they got some endorsement from a big media entity somewhere, and they couldn't meet the orders. So I was like, another one. What's missing in the value chain for us as African creators?
I think it's because where many of us are building for the audience we can see.
Okay.
Whereas the internet, social media has made the world a lot bigger. And it's so easy to go from 0 to 100, but it is dangerous when you don't have the infrastructure or the setup, because you will sign almost any deal to try and fulfill that demand. And a lot of times it might not be the right deal. So I think, the way I'm building House of Tayo is one eye on our immediate audience and the one we can see and we understand. But then what would happen if we had scale up significantly? What would it look like? So it starts with the ideation of like, what would it look like? And the times I'll sit and just daydream and try to think, maybe when I'm going on a run, I think, what would it look like? I think that's the starting point. Then you start to explore. And that's why it's important for me to now, I transitioned from, if I'm looking at where I source my products. Previously, I'm looking at Kigali. Kigali is a small market of people who buy my products. So I have to make sure there's variety all the time. So I'm buying small batches, like maybe 30 meters, 40 meters of a particular fabric, so that we make a couple of shirts and then you don't find them again. But when you're trying to go beyond borders, that 40 meters has to transition to 200, to 250, to, eventually to 1,000. So every year I push myself. I'm like, okay, our button supplier, what is their capacity? Can we start doing samples with another button supplier who can reach a bigger capacity? My fabric suppliers are like, okay, what is the lead time for you to make more fabric for me? Can you make the exact grade? And so I start by looking at the raw materials. Then from the raw materials, I'm looking at production, and I'm still looking for the right production partners to be able to significantly ramp up our production. Then from that point, I'll look at retail, and not just retail. I mean, I've had more conversations regarding retail, so I have a general idea of the people that I could work well with, and that's part of the reason we're having this conversation, because we were on the same wavelength for these sort of discussions. But we can't skip the product, I don't want to have just one shirt in every step and say I have a footprint. I don't.
What you're saying, and maybe this is an opportunity to make a plug for AfroQuality, the podcast. And one of the core motivations for wanting to build AfroQuality has been what you just said in terms of the journey, that we have a lot of instances where African creatives or people making things, because of your reality today, so you produce for that context. But if we don't have any machinery or any setup that prepares you to be able to produce en masse, then tomorrow when the day in the sun comes, it's like moving from 0 to 100. And that one, there's nobody, even if you are, I don't know, Superman, to be able to meet that demand. But then in an environment where we've created a machinery that allows an artisan to get comfortable with the idea of, okay, now I can produce, I used to produce 100, but now I'm producing 200, 300 because I'm distributing, instead of 2 countries, I'm distributing in 20 countries in Africa. I'm not a global brand yet, but my products are in 20 countries because there's a distribution infrastructure that I depend on. I don't have to worry about that. What that does is that when that moment comes, that Wakanda moment comes again for a House of Tayo, and you have to move from your production that you have that is supplying 20 countries to meeting demand that is coming from around the world, it is not a huge jump, because the way, like when you're working out or you're playing sport, muscle memory.
Exactly.
When you've been doing something and you've been doing it continuously, you already know the levers to pull, who to call and all that.
Exactly.
And that becomes a lot easier. So from a multiplier level, imagine having a system in place that allows a House of Tayo, a Sonia Mugabo, a Flove, or an Aflimba to all be able to achieve that. That's really the thinking and the mindset around building a business like AfroQuality. Other than that, everything will just be a dream. The policy will come, the trade rules will come and everything. But when the time comes, our makers do not have the training ground and the capacity to be able to scale up. That was Matthew Rugamba, founder and CEO. Well, he doesn't call himself CEO, creative director of House of Tayo. It's been an amazing conversation, a lot of amazing insights and nuggets. And for me, my biggest takeout from all this is staying committed to it and believe in yourself for the long haul. It's been interesting and we wish you all the best. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
This is Rooted in Quality by AfroQuality. We'll catch you again next time. Thank you.